This clip has divided the internet. It's the founder of the dating app Bumble talking about how artificial intelligence could revolutionize dating apps.
Our focus with AI is to help create more healthy and equitable relationships. And that also starts with yourself. How can we actually teach you how to date? How can we help you show up in a better way?
So give me an example.
Okay, so for example, you could in the near future be talking to your AI dating concierge and you could share your insecurities. I just came out of a breakup. I have commitment issues. And it could help you train yourself into a better way of thinking about yourself. And then it could give you productive tips for communicating with other people. If you want to get really out there, there is a world where your dating concierge could go and date for you with other dating concierge. No, truly. And then you don't have to talk to 600 people. It will go scan all of San Francisco for you and say, these are the 3 people you really ought to meet.
Now, I said that clip divided the internet, but that was maybe somewhat misleading, as pretty much everyone seems to hate the idea expressed there. So tweets like this were pretty common. Thankfully, AI makes movies, writes books, creates art, and falls in love, so you can focus on the important things, taking the bins out and sending emails. This is one of my favorites. At this point, being happily married must feel like having had the morning off from your job at the Twin Towers on 9/11. Lots of people also compared the clip to an episode of Black Mirror, which unfortunately I haven't yet seen. I might try and seek it out on the weekend. Comparisons were also made to arranged marriages. I like this one. Where I come from, we call them parents. So this is the AI dating concierge, which is matching people up. I say, though, it divided the internet because I also use the internet. And another contrarian opinion for this evening, I think it's quite a good idea. And the reason I think it's quite a good idea, I said this on Twitter today, a few people got a little bit annoyed, is because I think this is a worrying idea if you're comparing it to the world before dating apps. You know, I think it's probably nicer to have a culture whereby you don't meet people on apps, you meet them in bars, you know, you meet friends of friends, you meet them in the workplace. I think that's probably nicer, right? But actually what we live in, the world we live in at the moment is a world of terrible dating apps. And I don't think they're just terrible because of, you know, I mean, it is partly because they want you to get addicted to them. But I think the act of having so many profiles available to you, so sort of being able to swipe through 100 profiles at a time, gives, our brains aren't very good at dealing with that. And I think it constantly gives people this sort of incentive where they say, well, that person seems all right, but that person seems a bit more, you know, attractive to me, either physically or in terms of the way they've described themselves. And everyone's constantly sort of trying to trade up, to use sort of an unpleasant term. And that means that everyone's constantly sort of looking for something a little bit more, and everyone ends up incredibly lonely. So I think given that everyone is using dating apps, the idea that you could have some AI to sort of sort this out and suggest you only 3 people, and, you know, you've only got those 3, you're going to go on a date with one of them, that to me seems a lot more like pre sort of dating app world. Because what changed with dating apps is you can see 100 people at the same time. If the AI does this is a bit like your friend introducing you to someone you might get on with. Aaron, what do you think? I know you probably haven't used a dating app in a while as a married man, but did you use them before you got married? No.
No, I've been with my wife for 10 years. Before her, I was with somebody who was moderately serious. Didn't work out. And so not really. I mean, these things took off like 10 years ago, right? No, I find the whole thing very, very strange, Michael. And I think, frankly, they have a deeply destructive impact on society. So hearing your argument there articulated with typical fluency, I understand your point of view, and I think there's something to it, but I actually think these things are a huge net negative for society. I think there's something really, really bad happening to people who've only ever understood dating within this context. The point is, you need to date people you don't get on with. You need to date bad matches. You need to go out with people who are bad matches, because then you learn about what a good match is. You work out who you are, what you like. You might surprise yourself. Sometimes what's a bad match might actually be a great match. Opposites can sometimes attract. So this idea that we give away a slice of our freedom, so we have an optimized search for the ideal partner, I find it very sad. And it goes to the argument that's made by Yanis Varoufakis of techno-feudalism, that actually the idea of the free sovereign individual is slowly being disintegrated by predictive algorithms, machine learning, and the fact that really we are merely a data point for a different kind of intelligence to aggregate all of that data and then sell the various options and preferences back to us. I am quite concerned about it. The point about, by the way, arranged marriage is true. If you look at, for instance, in Iran, the sort of the family circles that I know, my dad's family is Iranian, there wouldn't be arranged marriage. People wouldn't be told who to marry. What would happen is there would be introductions made. You're from a certain social demographic, you have these interests. We think this is your personality type. This person would be a good match. And often, obviously, people try and get a match where it's high social status, well off, etc., quote unquote, good family. What's the difference? What's the difference? Same religion. What's the difference? Right? It's a very strange one for me. So, no, I think it's quite a dangerous thing. And I think actually there's a great deal to be learned from failed relationships. The most important lessons in life will come from failed relationships, especially romantic ones. There was an interesting canyard I heard the other day, Michael. This was from a veteran of the Vietnam War. And he said that one of the reasons why vets from the Vietnam War were so much more screwed up in his thinking, I mean, maybe this isn't objectively correct, but this was his interpretation, why they were so much more screwed up than veterans from World War II, despite both seeing horrific things, is that veterans from World War II returned to America from continental Europe on boats. They had, at length, conversations about what had happened over several weeks. They were collectively processing the trauma they'd been through effectively in a very human, fundamentally natural way. And then he said, well, what we had with Vietnam instead is that people basically went back home, often not even talking to other people within their units, and they were just incredibly atomized. And I feel like, lots of the technology and the processes and the strategies that were being sold to solve problems in the 21st century, well, actually, this was the norm 100, 150 years ago. If you want to outsource your romantic interests and even your future partner to other people to quote unquote optimize for a good choice, I don't see why Bumble and the CEO and their algorithm is any more reliable than your parents and your friends. I mean, I'm really at a loss for it, actually. I think it really speaks to significant problems we have in the West. And I do think, by the way, this stuff will precipitate a return to quite reactionary forms of politics. People will say, well, hold on, I prefer arranged marriage. I think that. I don't say that with any happiness, by the way. I think there's I did this tweet, actually, one of the responses to that video earlier on, which you didn't bring up, is that I think one of the great things of Western culture is that we see parents telling their children who they can and can't marry or go out with. We see that as a profound infringement on the autonomy of the individual. Many cultures don't, right? And I think it's sad, actually, that we have moved from a place where we understand the individual as autonomous and self-determining with regards to their romantic life. And we're saying, actually, no, there's a Silicon Valley company with a little algorithm. We'll give a little bit of autonomy over to them. I think that's a bad thing. Although your point about this being qualitatively better than the free-for-all we've seen with various dating apps over the last 10 years, there's probably some truth to that too.
Let's look at another video that's annoyed people this week. It's Apple's advert for their newest iPad. As you can imagine, this originally came with music, but that will get us copyrighted on YouTube. You can see a record playing there. You've got all sorts of artistic equipment, which is being crushed by a hydraulic press, I believe it's called. So you've got these sort of two really big, I don't know, is it cast iron, stainless steel, crushing this paint, crushing this piano. Everything's just getting completely obliterated. Very impressive looking video. The sculptures are being mushed. You get to the end there, it's all squished, and out there you get the thinnest iPad ever. Obviously, the intention behind this ad was to say, in this tiny little piece of equipment, we have managed to concentrate all of the creative abilities and capacities that one might have had by using all of this equipment, which we just crushed. I can see where they were coming from, but people are annoyed. The advert has been viewed 56 million times on Twitter, mainly because of people sharing it in fury. These were some of the top replies. You destroyed all the creative tools and efforts of humans. Worst commercial ever. I'm not sure wanton destruction of all the good and beautiful things is this world, or in this world, was really the vibe you were trying for. The symbolism of indiscriminately crushing beautiful creative tools is an interesting choice. I can't relate to this video at all. It lacks any respect for creative equipment and mocks the creators. And you can see these have all got hundreds of thousands of likes, or hundreds of thousands of views, tens of thousands of likes. And Apple haven't just decided this is just Twitter. They've taken the criticism to heart. Their VP of Marketing Communications released this statement on Thursday. Our goal is to always celebrate the myriad of ways users express themselves and bring their ideas to life through iPad. We missed the mark with this video, and we're sorry. I love that, the corporate apology where they say, we missed the mark with this one. Aaron, were they right to apologize? Were people right to be furious?
Were they right to apologize? Well, I suppose they think they're right to apologize because they've done it, and it was a big PR disaster. There's a great quote from Meredith Whittaker, Michael, my favorite tweet. She says here, it's notable that even Apple, a paragon of brand creation and maintenance, is so out of touch with this moment. It's not 2015. People want human art and no one trusts big tech. I think that's just so superbly put. You know, we've just had Dune 2 come out recently. And of course, the premise of the Dune films, although it's not very clear in the films, but the premise of the Dune universe is that all of this is happening after something thousands of years earlier called the Butlerian Jihad. There's an uprising against thinking machines. Precisely in order to make humans free, they destroy these machines to re-dignify the human essence, to re-enchant the world, as Max Weber might say. And I think that's a very valid critique, by the way, of technology. That's not to say I think we should destroy all technologies. I think there's many upsides to even an iPad. But there clearly are downsides too. And it was almost as if Apple was luxuriating in those downsides in the commercial. So, you know, the tactility of a musical instrument or the real world conversation you have with a friend in a bar is so profoundly different to a Zoom conversation. And I think this was really driven home to people by the pandemic, right? You know, it's great. The virtual world is great. People are watching this or listening to this because of the virtual world. I spend loads of time in the virtual world. I love podcasts. They're brilliant. Long-form conversations are in no way inferior to what we were seeing on television 20 years ago. In fact, they're far better. But it's clear that, you know, things can go too far and that, you know, you can spend too much time in the digital world. You mentioned a moment ago, Michael, about gay dating apps destroying offline spaces for LGBT people. I think that's a tragedy. I think it's a profound tragedy for the social fabric of somewhere like London and, of course, many other places too. So the thing for me, as Meredith Whittaker said in her tweet, is how Apple don't realize that moment's gone, right? Apple don't realize that there is now a profound, deep-seated cynicism about big tech, also a pessimism about the role of technology going forward. You know, 20 years ago, as you get Facebook and Apple and Google coming onto the scene, there was actually, amongst many people, myself included, the presumption that these tools were going to make life better. There will be some downsides, but they'll make life better. Now we're hearing siren voices like Jonathan Haidt. You don't have to agree with everything he said or even everything in his new book, but there are siren voices out there who say, actually, for instance, young people having access to smartphones, possibly unwise. We spoke a moment ago about dating apps. That doesn't mean you're a Luddite and you get rid of it all, but there is a skepticism, sometimes a cynicism, sometimes a pessimism. And Apple, like I say, just were like a bull in a china shop. It's like none of that conversation was happening. You know, it's still 2006. We've still just released the latest iPod. And actually, just to conclude, for me, it showed a real incongruence for the first time, I think, in decades, where Apple aren't in touch with the mainstream culture about what optimism looks like, about what the future looks like, about what modernity looks like, or what we want it to look like.